Hey, Milky here, back again with another MarvelSNAP video. Today I really wanted to get into a different type of video. I've been thinking about doing a video like this for a while, and I think it can help maybe a lot of people, especially when they're first starting out the game. And this video is really around how can someone maximize their rank in the game, how can they achieve infinite, how can they climb the ladder effectively. And so I've been playing the game ever since it first launched in Australia. And throughout each of the seasons we've had so far, fortunately, I've been able to achieve infinite rank in each of those. So I've kind of learnt some things along the way, some things that have helped me climb the ladder, some things that I did early on, some things that I haven't done that I did learn that I probably should be doing, and just some things that I've picked up as I've been climbing the ladder that I really think could be helpful for a lot of people in terms of climbing the ladder, but also achieving infinite in each season that you play. So with that being said, these are my 5 top tips to help you achieve infinite rank in every season of MarvelSNAP. Let's go. Okay, so the first tip, and something that I figured out very early on in the game, is that if you can grind the ladder early, it helps you so much later on. And what I mean by that is when you first start the game, you'll do tutorials and you kind of make your way through the initial content of the game, and then you'll get dropped into the game at rank 0. And infinite seems a long way away. It's 100 levels away, and each sub level within that has 10 levels. So it seems like it's a long journey, and it is. But one thing you can really do to help you when you first start the game that's going to help you down the track is to grind early on. So everyone starts off at rank 0, and you'll kind of make your way quickly through to rank 10. As you kind of play the game more and more, you'll slowly start going through the ladder, and you'll probably verse a lot of bots on the way, but you'll start going up through the ladder. Each season, you have the chance to achieve the highest rank you can in that season. So from level 0 all the way to level 100, which is infinite, there's 1,000 cubes to get there. And one thing you can do early on is to grind early. If you can make your way, even if it's not all the way to infinite early on, it will pay dividends in the next season that comes out. Because at the start of every single season, your rank will reset. It will drop 30 levels. So if you achieve infinite and you go into the next season, your rank will drop to rank 70, and that will be your starting point for that season. If you achieve rank 70 in a season, you at the start of the next season you will drop to rank 40, and that will be your starting point for the season. So a big thing that I think you can do early on, especially while you're fresh into the game, you're enjoying the game, you're ready to grind, I would say try and get as high a rank as you can as possible. It does seem a long way to go from all the way from rank 0 all the way to 100, but you'll feel that you can get momentum in this game quite quickly. The kind of if you're playing well, if you're thinking about what you're doing and you're really reading your opponents, there's a really good opportunity for you to kind of accelerate your way through the ranks quite quickly. So grinding early on not only helps you when you first start the game, it helps you progress through the collection levels and everything. It will help you in later seasons as well, and really set you up to achieve infinite every season from a very early stage you're playing the game, and not having to grind as much maybe later on when it can be harder. Also, the matchmaking when you play early on, you're more likely to queue in against players that are on your level with ideally with similar collection levels as to you, which means the games are going to be a bit easier than you queuing into people that have completed collections in pool 3. So I'd say if you can, grind early and try and get as high a rank as possible. Tip number 2 is disciplined retreating. Yep, you heard that right, retreating. And one thing that's really helped me, and I think the game really favors this style of play, is knowing when you've lost, or identifying when you have a good chance of losing, or when you're probably going to lose, and then retreating and moving on to the next game. It really favors that style of play. It's a really unique mechanic in the game where you can actually leave and retreat early on to minimize your losses. And if you're playing smart, you can really make this work to your advantage. There'll also be lots of games that you'll get to play out essentially for free. So every time you queue into a match, you're wagering at least 1 cube, but you get to play all the way till the final turn for free, meaning you're not going to lose any more than that 1 cube. So here's a good example. Let's say I play 10 games and I have a 50-50 win-loss ratio. I'm only winning every 1 in 2 games. If I can maximize the games that I do win, and let's say I win 4 cubes for each game that I do win. So I win 5 games at 4 cubes, that's 20 cubes total. And let's say I'm able to really minimize my losses when I do lose. So those 50% of times I'm losing 5 games, but I'm only losing 1 cube each game. That's 5 cubes I've lost. 20 minus 5, we're still 15 cubes in the positive, which is 1.5 levels on the ladder system. That's really good. You've played 10 games, you've minimized your losses, you've maximized your wins, and you've been able to progress up the ladder 1.5 levels. If you continue that, even at a 50-50 win-loss ratio, which by all means probably isn't the best win-loss ratio, you can easily get to infinite, you can easily climb the ladder system quite well and quite effectively. So the third tip I have really is around the snapping mechanic in the game. There's 2 kind of sub-tips within this one. One of them is snapping early. Often if you have a really good hand, you think you're curving out well, or you've got all the key combo pieces or cards in your hand that you need for your deck and you're ready to go, snapping early can often get you some really quick retreats. Sometimes even they'll retreat on turn 1 or 2, which means you've taken your cube, you win 1 cube, and you get out of the game and move on to the next one. So there's lots of quick wins you can get there. Snapping early can also give your opponent a false sense of you having a great hand, and they've kind of carried that thought through them without the game. And if they do progress onto 1 turn further than you snapping, you double down on what you could potentially win, and they might retreat anyway. So snapping early can work often. It's not going to work all the time, but if you're confident in your hand and you're ready to play it out, I'd say snapping early is a great way to go about it. The other part of this tip would really be learning how to min-max when you are going to win. So how can you maximize the cubes that you're going to get when you win? And that doesn't always involve snapping. Sometimes you don't want to scare your opponent away, especially when you've got a really strong hand. Sometimes you can play all the whole game through and you haven't snapped, and your opponent hasn't snapped, and you're at turn 5 and you could win 1 cube. But if you play it out, and you most likely in most circumstances you could win that last turn, it's best just not to snap, and then you're going to get 2 cubes and you're not going to scare your opponent away. So you can also do this when your opponent snaps you. So if your opponent snaps you and you think that snapping back, the read that you have on the game is snapping back might scare them off, you can just hold your snap and not actually snap, and walk away with 4 cubes if you can get the win quite easily at the end. So that's also another bit of interplay that you have with the snapping mechanic as well. Tip number 4 we have is around deck building and tech cards. Deck building, particularly early on, make sure you're updating the decks that you're running with the new cards that you unlock. As you move quickly through pool 1 and pool 2, you're going to constantly be unlocking cards. Make sure you use them in the decks. If they're going to benefit your deck, if they're going to make it stronger, use them in the decks that you already have, and then that might make winning easier for you as well. The other part is tech cards, and this kind of goes across all ranks of the ladder and collection levels. If you're constantly versing a particular type of deck, or you're constantly losing to a particular type of deck, it's worth thinking about whether you can tech in certain cards to make your deck strong against those types of decks. Maybe they're a meta deck, maybe they're just something you're versing really regularly and finding it hard to beat. Think about the tech cards that you could potentially use against those decks. I know when I was climbing the ladder the first time, I versed a lot of kind of like Death Wave decks where they have large minions played out at the end with Death and Venom and Taskmaster. I was able to tech in Shang-Chi to get some sneaky wins there, which really helped me kind of like accelerate my climb. Think about the tech cards you might want to include, and tech cards can also apply to locations. So if there's a specific featured location for the day that's going to appear more regularly than other locations, think about tech cards that could work well with those locations as well, and how that might benefit you climbing the ladder and playing the game as well. The last tip I have on deck building is go for consistency over high roll. Consistent decks will help you perform better across the long run than high roll decks, which really focus in on a specific combo and sequencing of cards. If you can focus on a consistent deck, which might not be the flashiest or the funnest, but it will help you climb much faster and be consistent in doing so. So tip number 5 is bluffing. Marvel Snap's a really unique game with the snapping system and the snapping mechanic that's in the game. And it makes it almost feel poker-esque, where you are trying to read your opponent, you're trying to understand what they're doing, they're trying to do the same to you, and trying to come out on top ultimately. And a big part of this is potentially bluffing. So you can essentially bluff in a number of different ways in the game. You can do it through emoting or the emojis in the game. You can also do it through snapping at particular points in time, but this can be really good mechanic to kind of throw off your opponent, especially if they think they might have a good play but they're not certain. Snapping at a key point like that might actually scare them off and get you a win, even when you are definitely going to lose that game. So think about when it could be good to bluff and when it could be beneficial, and you do get better at practice. I'm definitely not great at it, but I do throw it in the mix every now and then, which is fun. Finally, a bit of a bonus tip that I have for climbing the ladder and achieving infinite each season is a little bit of a sneaky one. It's to actually look at the ranked cosmetic rewards for that season. So if you look here on my screen, this season's ranked rewards is a Hydra card back. Previous ranked season rewards were avatars, being the Thor and Daredevil avatars. And one thing that you can do that's a little bit sneaky is to, if you're queuing in and against an opponent and they have the Hydra card back attached this season, or they're using the Daredevil avatar last season, or the season before maybe they're using the Thor avatar. If you identify that, they've already achieved infinite status. And when you achieve infinite rank in the game, you can't actually drop out of it. So it's at this point where a lot of people and a lot of players experiment with decks, and they try all sorts of different things, and they just start playing the game more freely rather than just grinding the ladder. So some of these things that I've talked about, maybe bluffing and maybe snapping early, those kind of things may not work against these players. So it's really good to be able to identify these players who maybe have already achieved infinite rank for that season and just adjust how you play against them. So that wraps up our top 5 tips for achieving ranked each and every season in Marvel Snap. I really hope this video helped you out. Please leave some comments on tips that you've found along the way or things that have helped you achieve infinite rank. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them below for sure. We'd love to have you like the video if you're up for it, and also feel free to subscribe to the channel. There'll be tons more videos coming out and content coming out of the channel in the coming weeks, and we'd love to have you on board. Until the next one, see you then.